Hello, everyone. Here we are to talk about the full moon in Virgo. When is that full moon exact, Jenny?
It is 3:17 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on the 27th of February. So it's coming in
Oh,
hot.
okay.
Mhm.
So the full moon is the full illumination of the cycle that began at the new moon. That new moon on February 11th was right in the middle of that huge gathering in Aquarius. And whatever seed you planted at that point, now you want to look at it, see where the full illumination is occurring in your life. And really, thinking about the full moon as a time when we see what we hadn't seen before, when things are illuminated. You go outside at night, if it's a clear night, and that full moon will light up everything. You can't hide in the corners anymore. So that's what the full moon is about.
Mhm.
When we think about this in terms of our personal lives, where does this show up in our lives? What do we want to think about with this, Jenny?
Well, because it's a full moon, you're looking at this polarity and the whole idea of the paradox of how, as human beings, we have to struggle with opposite things a lot. It's just part of being human. And so it really brings that into play. So the thing to think about is, where does that polarity fall? So even though we're going to focus on the one area where the moon's going to fall, you want to also think about the opposite. And so in this case, we have the sun in Pisces, and then the moon is directly opposite in Virgo. So you're looking for that axis in your chart, and particularly paying attention to the Virgo because that's where the moon is.
Right.
Yeah.
And you want to think about, what that polarity is. What is the polarity between Virgo and Pisces? Where's the similarity and where's the difference between the two of them? So, you were reading to me something that you had written about that polarity.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit
Well,
about?
I like what you just said. I like how you just said there's something that's similar. So probably the similarity between Virgo and Pisces is this idea of service, is
Yes.
this idea of it being in service to something larger than you, or being of help to others. That we'll keep it that, as that's kind of the common ground. But probably where they're opposite is Pisces is concerned with the big picture, the major picture of like no boundaries between anybody, like we're all one, we're all on this planet, and the ocean symbolizes that beautifully, like this, multi layers of life, just this whole massive thing. And then Virgo is the more like, well, how do you get it done? What's the nuts and bolts? How do you go out in the street and feed the poor? How do what do you do? You got to go buy food, you got to, find where the people are, bring it to them, so it really is the logistics of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's that difference between, Pisces has this huge imagination, this huge view, and Virgo just wants to get it done. Yeah, the polarities are always, it's like two sides of the same coin.
Mhm.
They both want the same thing, but they're coming at it from a different angle. So on an individual level, we can break this down and see where we're approaching this depending on our rising sign,
Mhm.
right? So if you look at your chart, if you know what your rising sign is, you can very simply see where this is happening in your own life, what's being illuminated
Mhm.
between those two. So with Aries rising, the full moon itself, the illumination is in the sixth house. Is that
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So what we're looking at, what we really need to be paying attention to, what we can see right now is the value of our day-to-day routines,
Mhm.
our health exercise practices, spiritual practices, like
Mhm.
practical ways of setting those pieces in line. Go get yourself a new kitten or start a new health regime, something that's
Yeah.
going to really impact the day-to-day routines.
Yeah, and some way of paying attention to whatever's going on in that area of life, and
Right.
And and in the sixth house, it's like also going to be like your day-to-day work practices, like your workplace, which for most of us is probably at home right now. So
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
So, so with, if you've got Taurus rising, it's occurring in your fifth house.
Hmm.
And that's going to really illuminate, and you're going to want to pay attention and illuminate issues around how and where you give of yourself, where you give love, where you have fun. What else would you say about that?
Well, because we're looking at Virgo, in the fifth house is, as you said, the giving of love, and to some degree, how you find your creative expression and joy. So it's sort of like finding what is joyful about your diligence. About having a diligent work routine, like bringing those Virgo things in, like having joy in the simple things of that, like the
Yeah,
simple schedule.
that's great. So if you've got Gemini rising, it's happening in your fourth house, which is your home. So you want to really look at developing some clarity and specificity in your home. It might be time to take on a major cleaning project.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. Either literally cleaning your home, but also thinking about your inner house, like so parts of your personality that maybe need a little bit of a tidy up
Right.
to do with
Something
your
needs to
family.
be
Yeah.
tidied up. Yeah, you can think of that with the Virgo full moon, is wherever it is, something needs to be illuminated and seen and tidied up.
Yep,
Very good.
exactly.
So with Cancer
Yeah.
rising, it's in your third house. You're going to be looking at your communication
Mhm.
um, with the people in your general everyday life. I think, it's
Mhm.
just communication skills. If you've got a writing project going on,
Mhm.
or issues with your siblings can also
Yeah.
be really illuminated at this time. Communications with your siblings or with
Mhm.
just day-to-day people in your life.
Yeah, and it simply could just be bringing a little more humility to how you communicate. That's it.
That's that's
Just
that's great. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, really bringing more humility and really paying attention to the words that you're using, not being just bombastic in your approach.
Yeah,
Yeah,
great.
humility. Okay,
Yeah.
so if you've got Leo
Yeah.
rising, we're looking at the second house. You're going to
Mhm.
want to really get specific about how you're spending your money,
Mhm.
or how you're making your money, and making sure, that humility thing with Virgo makes me think about just the importance of integrity in how you make or spend money. You
Mhm.
know, is all your money going to Amazon, or are you buying local? That kind of thing,
Oh, yeah.
I think, would be important to look at with
Oh,
that.
that's great, Lori. Yeah. Where my head went with the second house was just understanding that being competent is a resource. So just thinking about how you use your own resources and what some of those are. So
That's great. That's
yeah.
great. So if you've got Virgo rising, it's occurring in your first house, and that's yourself.
Mm.
So really looking at your own humility in your personality,
Hmm.
how you approach others. Huh,
Hmm.
that's a good one.
Yeah. And just I was thinking about, since it's yourself, it's like just being authentic and kind in whatever your judgment is as you're looking around you. Um,
And I'm glad you said
yeah.
that, Jenny. I think, one of the things with Virgo itself that is often overlooked is just there's a kindness in Virgo,
Hmm.
in that need to be of service and humility. And there's such a kindness in Virgo. And so that's a good thing also to think about wherever it falls in your house. Are you being kind in that area?
Yeah.
Really
Yeah.
looking at that. So if you've got Libra rising, it's happening in your 12th house. There might be something that you need to tidy up in your own unconscious, some patterns of behavior that may be illuminated in this
Yeah.
at this time that you weren't noticing
Hmm.
until this full
Yeah.
moon illuminates it.
That's right. And the 12th house, I think, sometimes brings in that whole question around redemption. So just, having that we're all flawed and we all make mistakes. And there's this, we have to wrestle with this idea of redemption, and that some of that redemption can be attained through service to others.
Yeah.
So it just kind of brings in that. Yeah, it's
That's
great.
great. Okay, so if you have, let me see, what's next? Scorpio. You've
Hmm.
got Scorpio rising. We're looking at your 11th house. Where do you need to tidy up your community? Where do you need to be kind within the context of the people who support you?
Yeah. I was thinking with this, like this idea of like, yeah, you can go out and help people, but what's even better is if you go help people and you recruit your friends to come with you. And then now you got a little team to help people. So I was thinking about that.
Right, right. And that team supports your ability to go forth and continue.
Yeah.
It's kind of creates a cycle there. That's interesting. Okay, so if
Yeah.
you've got Sagittarius rising, it's happening in your 10th house. It's time to look at your career. What is it that at this time of this full moon is illuminated in terms of the humility and kindness you bring to your career?
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's great. I
Okay.
thought of that too, of just like, since I've always struggled with having a boss, I was like, well, in this case, let your boss be how you are of service to others. So holding that as your kind of authority figure.
Right, right. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you've got Capricorn rising, it's in your 9th house. And 9th house is all about your worldview.
Hmm.
So it can really be about, your understanding of cultural issues, big picture. Yeah, your worldview. What do
Yeah.
you need to, how do you bring humility and kindness? Hmm. What,
Yeah.
what do you think with that?
Well, I was just thinking that the ninth house also can represent a course of study, of higher learning. So having Virgo there brings into, well, how do you get the nuts and bolts done? Are you on chapter 2 and you're doing the exercises for chapter 2 or whatever it is? But that
Yeah.
that's what I thought.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. That's great. Yeah, you think the 9th house is also about things like publishing and,
Mm,
if you're writing a book, this is very, very apt
yeah.
for you to pay attention to. So it's,
Hmm.
something in that area of study or publishing or something along those lines. 8th house, if you've got Aquarius rising, this is happening in your 8th house.
Hmm.
So you're going to want to be bringing those issues of humility and kindness and service to people who have values very different than your own.
Mm, hmm.
Giving people a break
Yeah.
and learning from your own triggers by other people's values.
Hmm. I don't know what you mean. I, well, it's funny because you went that way. I went the other way with it a little bit with the eighth house, thinking like letting your insight like cut through the baggage of other people, but not in a mean way, just in a way to get clarity. Because it's hard to figure stuff out in that eighth house. It's kind of murky and like, what's where do I end and the other person start, and sometimes it's helpful just to be like, all right, I
Well,
need to just.
that brings in the polarity between the 2nd house and the 8th house with the
Mhm.
polarity of the full moon. It really is kind of understanding what's yours and what's someone
Yeah.
else. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And then what do we just have the Pisces
So
left?
then, yeah, Pisces rising, that shows up in your 7th house. So you've got all that humility and kindness and service to a partner, a partnership,
Mhm.
whether that be your spouse or your I don't know, work partners
Mhm.
can be in there, all kinds of intimate one-on-one relationships. So you've got to bring that humility and kindness, and you're able to see that with this full moon.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's well said.
So yeah, now let's open up the chart itself and take a quick glance at it
Okay.
from a larger perspective.
Okay, let me just grab that for us and take this, yeah, into the more cosmic perspective. Here's the
Yeah,
chart for the full moon. So,
and this is a beautiful
of course,
chart.
this is the East Coast of the United States. Yeah.
This is a really beautiful chart. I'm going to put first here, let's make a clear line there from the sun to the moon. There's the polarity, the sun in Pisces, the moon in Virgo. And the immediate thing that draws my attention first is the fact that sun and Venus are together. So we've got that the moon is opposing both of those, which just brings in more kindness, more love, more sweetness into this equation. This is a very, very sweet full moon, I think.
Mhm. Yeah, it's quite a lot of things to look at, as we'll show you here as Laura draws in more lines. But so this the east coast of the United States, you have the moon in Virgo in the ninth house, the search for meaning and contribution through the ninth house. So there's that. What other things did we see? We got a grand trine in this chart, don't we,
We've
Lori?
got a grand trine. The moon is trining Uranus, which is, in the East Coast.
Yeah,
This
not every chart.
this wouldn't be if you're on the West Coast or somewhere else. But from the East Coast, we've got a grand trine in Earth, which just brings in a lot of real practicality, which, the moon in Virgo is all practical, but then it just steps it up a bit with that grand trine and brings in some excitement of what can be done on a practical level. With that Uranus trining the moon in Virgo, I think, there's just a real excitement of what can be accomplished with what we are able to see in this, the greater good and the service to humanity, what we can do. This is a very hopeful chart to me.
Yeah, it's a pretty uplifting view in this.
We've had so many not uplifting lunations for quite a while. And this one is really lovely.
Yeah. So Lori's bringing in there is the sextile. So this is what you call a kite formation in the chart. She's showing the sextile between the ascendant and Sun and Venus, and towards Uranus too.
Yeah.
So it's just adding in these other really nice flowing things that flow to the sun as well as the moon.
Yeah. Yeah.
So supporting Pisces as well.
Yeah. Very uplifting.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing that I think we should really touch on, I mean, there's a lot of other things we could, pick apart here.
Yeah.
But thinking about, which we usually do in these videos, just the path of the moon between the new moon and the full moon. Because the way I think about this is when the moon 2 weeks ago was conjunct the sun, it started a process. And then when that process gets going and the moon starts moving away from the sun, it bumps into a series of planets on its way to the illumination. So in this case, this month, after the new moon, the moon first landed on Neptune. And the way I think of it is the moon picks up the energy to bring it with it. It brings it forward. So it picks up Neptune. And you had something lovely to say about this pathway, Jennie, of first picking up Neptune, then Chiron. You think about it, Neptune is about mystical understandings. Chiron is about healing energy. Uranus is wake up energy. And Mars is getting things done, taking action. And then the North Node is a path forward. So how did you worded it in a way that I thought was so beautiful?
Yeah, well, I mean, you kind of just said it. I mean, basically, it's just this idea that the first kind of bell it rings is it hits that Neptune, which is all about our interconnectedness. And then when it lands on Chiron, it brings in that we all need to heal this. And then when you hit Uranus, it's like, and wake up. And then Mars is like, and take action on it. So it's kind of like this 4-step, this 4-step process of understanding all of us being together and what our collective wounds are, and then how we wake up and what we do about it.
Oh, I love that. So
when it comes, well,
in this
sorry.
little 2-week period, we've really done that work, and now we can see how far it's come.
Yeah, I was just going to add, because then the final thing it does is it hits that north node, and for the last few months, the north node has been in Gemini, so that just constantly brings in this, hey guys, we need to communicate, we need to listen, we need to talk, we need to get clear about, and what is communication, and how do you do it kindly, how do you include others, how do you make it inclusive, how do you know when to step back and listen and when to step up and talk, and all of those kinds of things. It just keeps bringing that forward.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And when the moon actually hit on the north node was probably right around the first quarter phase of the moon,
Mm,
which is
mhm.
about taking action
Yeah.
on what began. So what began at the new moon, action was taken and
Mm,
around the communication, and now we see the results.
Oh, that's
I love
nice,
that.
Lori. Yeah.
That's lovely. That's lovely.
Yeah.
So, in thinking about this as the culmination of this 2-week process since the new moon, we can also look back and think about it as the longer cycle from the new moon in Virgo, which I think you said was in September.
Yeah, the 17th. Yep.
September 17th. So
Hmm.
if you think back to that period of time, September 17th, think about what might have started then and how this process has played out and how this period of time is an illumination on that larger cycle as well.
Yeah. Wow. So yeah, I was just thinking as you're saying that, I was noticing where that was landing for me. And I think what was really interesting for me is that, for those of you who watch these videos, like my parents lost their house in the wildfires back in August, and September 17th was the day that we started, or very close to the day that I made a plan with my sister, because it lands in the third house for me, the Virgo, and that we made a plan, and I was meeting with my parents in California and driving them back across country. And so here we are at the full moon, and they are here, and we're making our kind of next steps plan for how to get them into a better living situation. So
Wow. That's really interesting. That's really,
astrology works.
what'd you say?
So astrology works.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You can't make it up.
Yeah. What
Yeah.
about you, Lori? Do you have
Well,
any?
I haven't even thought about the
Mm,
larger cycle, the
mm.
6-month cycle, but this full moon falls in my first house. So I guess I should be thinking about humility in relationships. Interesting, I'm sure.
Well, it's a good thing to think about. So even if not, something's not coming super clear to mind, like my story just popped in my head, there's
Right.
usually at least a couple bits of information you can get by applying the keywords, some of the ones we mentioned about Virgo, to that area of your life, and just reflect on that and see what you come up with.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely can see that full moon from the 1st to the 7th. And I think I know where it's at, but I don't think I'm ready to talk about it in public.
Hey, fair enough. Well, anyway, is there anything else you wanted to add, or I feel like we're pretty good?
I think we're good. And we will see you all at the new moon in 2 weeks.
That sounds great. Thanks,
All right.
Lori. Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you, Jenny.